What if the world's most famous hamburger company is not really built around hamburgers? McDonald's serves millions of customers every day. Its restaurants are everywhere. Its menu is recognized across continents. And for most people, the explanation for its success seems obvious: sell inexpensive food, serve it quickly, and repeat the formula at enormous scale. But that explanation misses something important. McDonald's does not directly operate most of the restaurants that carry its name. By the end of 2025, roughly 95% of its locations worldwide were run by franchisees. That means the people hiring staff, managing kitchens, buying equipment, and handling daily operations are usually not employees of McDonald's Corporation. They are independent business owners operating inside the McDonald's system. So if the company does not run most of its own restaurants, where does its power actually come from? The common belief is that McDonald's wins because it sells more hamburgers than almost anyone else. The golden arches attract customers. The menu creates sales. The franchisees operate the stores. McDonald's then collects a portion of the revenue through franchise fees and royalties. That is true, but it is not the whole story. In many traditional franchise arrangements, McDonald's does more than license its name and operating system. The company often owns the land, owns the building, or controls the property through a long-term lease. The franchisee may own the kitchen equipment and pay for the interior, but McDonald's often controls the ground beneath the restaurant. This creates an unusual structure. The franchisee invests capital, runs the business, manages employees, and absorbs much of the daily operating risk. McDonald's provides the brand, the system, the supply chain, and the customer demand. But it also controls the location on which the entire business depends. The franchisee does not simply pay for the right to sell Big Macs. The franchisee may also pay rent to McDonald's, often linked to the restaurant sales. That changes the relationship. McDonald's is not only earning money because food is being sold. It is earning money because a restaurant is operating on a location that the company controls. And that raises a deeper question. Is McDonald's successful because it is exceptionally good at selling fast food? Or is fast food the engine that makes a much more powerful economic structure work? Calling McDonald's a real estate company sounds exaggerated. After all, land alone does not bring customers through the door. Empty buildings do not generate royalties. A restaurant location has little value to the system without the brand, the menu, the operating model, and the franchisee who runs it. But calling McDonald's only a fast food chain may be just as misleading. Because once we look beyond the counter, the company begins to appear very different. The real question is not whether McDonald's sells hamburgers or owns property. It is why controlling the property beneath thousands of restaurants gives the company such lasting financial power. To understand why this structure matters, we need to separate the business into two different layers. The first layer is the one customers see. People walk into a restaurant, order a meal, receive their food within minutes, and leave. Everything that creates this experience depends on the franchisee. They hire employees, manage daily operations, maintain the restaurant, purchase equipment, and make sure every customer receives the same experience expected from the McDonald's brand. From the customer's perspective, the restaurant appears to be McDonald's. From a business perspective, however, it is usually an independently owned company operating under McDonald's system. This distinction is more important than it first appears. When someone becomes a McDonald's franchisee, they are not simply purchasing the right to use a famous logo. They are joining an operating system that has been refined over decades. McDonald's provides standardized menus, supplier networks, marketing support, technology platforms, operating procedures, quality controls, and one of the most recognizable brands in the world. The franchisee contributes capital, local execution, and day-to-day management. This arrangement allows the company to expand much faster than if it had to finance and operate every restaurant itself. Instead of carrying the operational burden of thousands of individual locations, McDonald's shares that responsibility with entrepreneurs who have their own financial incentive to make each restaurant successful. That creates a powerful alignment of interests. The better a restaurant performs, the better the franchisee performs. But unlike many franchise systems, McDonald's often adds another layer to this relationship. According to the company's own annual reports, McDonald's frequently owns the land beneath a restaurant or controls it through long-term lease agreements before granting a franchise for that location. The franchisee invests in the restaurant itself, including kitchen equipment, furniture, signage, and interior improvements. McDonald's, however, often retains control over the underlying property. The result is a relationship that extends far beyond brand licensing. A franchisee typically pays an initial franchise fee to enter the system. After opening the restaurant, the franchisee also pays continuing royalty fees for the use of the brand and operating system. In many locations, the franchisee also pays rent to McDonald's for the property on which the restaurant operates. These agreements commonly extend for around 20 years. When that period ends, the franchisee does not automatically take the location with them. McDonald's continues to control the site. The company can renew the relationship with the existing operator, appoint a different franchisee, or choose another direction for that location altogether. That may sound like a simple contractual detail. In reality, it changes the economics of the entire system. A successful restaurant is not only defined by its menu or its employees. It is also defined by where it is located. High-traffic intersections, busy commercial districts, transportation corridors, and densely populated neighborhoods can take years to identify, secure, and develop. Once a location consistently attracts customers, it becomes an increasingly valuable business asset. McDonald's has spent decades building a global network of these locations alongside its restaurant system. At this stage, it would be easy to conclude that property ownership alone explains the company's strength. But that conclusion would still be incomplete. The real significance of these locations does not come from owning valuable land by itself. It comes from the way that land interacts with franchising, customer demand, and the economic incentives that connect every participant inside the McDonald's system. The financial results begin to reveal why this arrangement is so unusual. When people think about restaurant companies, they often focus on sales. More customers should mean more revenue. More restaurants should mean more profit. That logic works reasonably well for businesses that directly operate most of their locations. McDonald's follows a different path. Its annual reports separate the business into two major segments. One consists of restaurants operated directly by the company. The other consists of franchised restaurants operated by independent business owners. At first glance, company-operated restaurants appear impressive because every meal sold is recorded as revenue. Franchise restaurants work differently. McDonald's does not record every hamburger, every order of fries, or every soft drink sold by a franchisee as its own revenue. Instead, it records the payments it receives from franchisees, primarily through rent, royalty fees, and franchise-related income. That accounting difference changes the way the entire business should be evaluated. In 2025, McDonald's reported approximately $16.5 billion in revenue from franchised restaurants. Company-operated restaurants generated roughly $9.7 billion in revenue. Looking only at those figures might suggest that franchising is simply another source of income. The profitability tells a much more important story. According to the company's financial statements, franchised restaurants generated approximately $13.9 billion in operating margin. Company-operated restaurants generated roughly $1.4 billion. In other words, the franchised business produced the overwhelming majority of restaurant-level operating profit. The difference is not accidental. A company-operated restaurant must pay for food ingredients, restaurant employees, utilities, maintenance, repairs, and countless operating expenses every single day. A franchised restaurant still faces those same costs. The difference is that those costs belong primarily to the franchisee. McDonald's continues to receive contractual payments while transferring much of the daily operational complexity to the independent operator. The composition of that franchise revenue is equally revealing. During 2025, more than $10 billion came from rent. Approximately $6 billion came from royalty payments. Initial franchise fees represented only a very small portion of the total. That means the relationship between McDonald's and its franchisees is not built around one-time licensing payments. It is built around recurring cash flows that continue year after year as restaurants remain successful. The company's balance sheet reinforces the same pattern. At the end of 2025, McDonald's reported ownership of approximately 56% of the land and 80% of the buildings associated with its consolidated restaurant portfolio. The net book value of land and property connected with franchised locations exceeded $22 billion, including more than $7 billion represented by land alone. These are not passive investments sitting separately from the restaurant business. They are assets directly connected to thousands of operating locations across the world. Yet none of these numbers, by themselves, prove that McDonald's is fundamentally a real estate company. Owning valuable property can generate rent. It cannot create customers. Royalty income still depends on restaurants remaining busy. Rent linked to restaurant sales still depends on franchisees running successful businesses. If customers stop visiting McDonald's, every part of this economic structure begins to weaken. That is why the financial statements point toward a more important question. If food branding, franchising, and property all depend on one another, then what role is the ownership of those locations actually playing inside the entire business model? The numbers become much easier to understand once we stop thinking about property as a separate business. The popular description says that McDonald's is really a real estate company. It is a memorable phrase. It is also incomplete. If McDonald's simply bought valuable land and rented it to restaurants, there would be nothing particularly unusual about the business. Countless commercial property owners collect rent from restaurants, supermarkets, and retail stores every day. McDonald's does something fundamentally different. Its properties are not independent investments. They are carefully integrated into a much larger economic system. The restaurant attracts customers. The brand creates trust. The operating system keeps the customer experience consistent. The franchisee invests capital and manages daily execution. The property ties all of those elements together. That combination changes the incentives for everyone involved. Because McDonald's often controls the location itself, it does not simply grant permission for someone to use its brand. It retains long-term influence over one of the restaurant's most valuable assets. A successful restaurant is difficult to relocate. Customer habits develop around a specific place. Traffic patterns, visibility, surrounding businesses, and neighborhood demographics all contribute to a location's value. Once those advantages have been built over many years, they cannot simply be moved across the street. That gives the underlying property's strategic importance far beyond its market price. The company's own franchise agreements reinforce this relationship. Franchisees typically pay royalty fees based on restaurant sales, while rent frequently includes a component linked to those same sales, together with contractual minimum payments. This creates an important alignment. When a restaurant performs better, both the franchisee and McDonald's benefit. Unlike a conventional landlord that receives fixed rent regardless of business performance, McDonald's remains economically connected to the success of each location. At the same time, the company maintains a layer of protection through long-term contractual rights over the property itself. That combination is difficult to replicate. The property is not valuable because it exists. It becomes valuable because it supports a restaurant that benefits from one of the world's strongest consumer brands and one of the world's largest franchise systems. The franchise system, in turn, becomes more stable because the company continues to control the locations that matter most. If a franchise agreement eventually expires, McDonald's does not automatically lose the site that customers have associated with the brand for years. The company can continue operating from that location with another qualified franchisee if necessary. That is an entirely different form of control from simply licensing intellectual property. Even so, the model has clear limits. McDonald's cannot ignore restaurant performance. Its own filings acknowledge that weaker franchisee sales ultimately affect both royalty income and rent linked to sales. An empty restaurant produces neither thriving franchisees nor attractive cash flows. Property alone cannot compensate for a weak brand, poor execution, or declining customer demand. Instead, the property strengthens a business model that is already creating customer traffic. Seen from this perspective, the land beneath a McDonald's restaurant is not the final source of the company's strength. It is the mechanism that protects the relationship between the brand, the franchisee, the customer, and the recurring cash flows generated by all three. The real advantage is not ownership for its own sake. It is ownership that allows the entire system to remain coordinated, disciplined, and economically aligned over decades of expansion. Looking back, the phrase that McDonald's is a real estate company captures only part of what is happening. It identifies an important asset. It does not explain why that asset creates such extraordinary value. The evidence throughout the business model points toward a more complete explanation. McDonald's still depends on customers choosing its restaurants over thousands of competitors. It still depends on a recognizable brand, efficient operations, reliable suppliers, attractive menu offerings, and franchisees capable of running profitable businesses. Without those elements, ownership of land would accomplish very little. At the same time, selling hamburgers alone cannot explain the company's long-term financial resilience. Many restaurant chains serve popular food. Many expand through franchising. Far fewer combine franchising with long-term control over strategically important locations. That difference changes the economics of the system. Every successful restaurant strengthens more than a single business owner's income. It also reinforces the value of a location controlled by McDonald's. Every additional customer increases the performance of a franchisee while supporting recurring royalty payments and, in many cases, rent connected to restaurant sales. The better the restaurant performs, the stronger the entire structure becomes. This creates a reinforcing cycle rather than a collection of separate businesses. The restaurant generates customer demand. The brand attracts trust. The franchisee executes the operation. The property protects the relationship between all of them. None of these pieces produces the same result on its own. Together, they create a system that has expanded across more than 100 countries while maintaining an unusually consistent economic model. This is why focusing only on the visible part of McDonald's can be misleading. Customers see burgers, fries, and drive-through lanes. Investors often notice royalties and rental income. But the real strength comes from the way physical assets support the entire business architecture. The land beneath each restaurant is not simply another investment on the balance sheet. It gives McDonald's enduring influence over locations that have already proven their commercial value. It allows the company to maintain long-term relationships with franchisees without surrendering control of the sites that make those businesses possible. Over time, those physical assets become more than property. They become infrastructure for the business itself. That perspective also explains why describing McDonald's as either a fast food company or a real estate company creates a false choice. It is neither business in isolation. It is a restaurant franchise system that uses strategic ownership of real estate to protect, stabilize, and reinforce its entire economic model. Perhaps that is the most valuable lesson hidden beneath the golden arches. The greatest source of long-term strength is not always the product customers buy. Sometimes it is the asset that quietly determines who controls the system through which that product is sold. For McDonald's, the greatest value does not simply sit behind the counter. A significant part of it has been built beneath the restaurant itself, where ownership of strategic locations has helped transform millions of individual meals into a durable financial engine that has endured for decades.